Wizards of Morcar, Earl of Northumbria. Morcar, Earl of Northumbria. My Northumbrian viewers, can you weigh in on this? Have you been cooked this whole time because of the Earl? Or are you actually living on cloud nine? Is Morcar actually a fantastic nobleman, and we've just been fed mentorist propaganda to stain his image over the last 35 plus years? I would believe it. I would believe it. In today's climate, absolutely. Hi, welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is HeroQuest, and this is the Wizards of Morcar speculation video. This is going to contain all of my yapping about Wizards of Morcar, past, present, future, and I've got some disclaimers to make. One, I'm not under any gag order, no NDA, I'm not breaking street date. There's nothing of the sort like that happening because I have no official news. There is no official announcement. There's no leaked information. Everything is under wraps, if it is indeed in existence at all. I'm just speculating. I have no materials, no communication whatsoever from Avalon Hill. I'm not associated or affiliated on any official level with Avalon Hill or Hasbro, not for a lack of trying, but that disclaimer was important because somebody was talking about just normal Wizards of Morcar here in recent weeks, and they got served with some kind of a notice saying, hey, you can't talk about stuff that we haven't released yet, which is more telling, actually, than anything. But leaving that alone, I have with me a piece of paper with all the speculations that I thought of and wanted to make sure I jotted down. And this looks small, but you see the length of the video. So disclaimer number 2, I'm going to be yapping this entire time. Everything in that timeline there, the whole scrub bar, we're just going to be talking about Wizards of Morcar. So just be warned, this is going to be a long yap video. I have with me as well the Classic Editions quest book. This is the UK EU English language version of the quest book, and it contains just all of the information that you could possibly want to know about the classic Wizards of Morcar. So with all of that being said, I don't want to look at this generic image search. So I'm going over to sodemons.com, the stuff of legends, and I'll let you look at these beautiful plastic prototype statues from the Wizards of Morcar that they have graciously photographed for our viewing pleasure. We'll look at some other pictures that I happen to have tucked away as well. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. I'm Ash. I do a lot of HeroQuest content and a lot of other board game, dungeon crawler adjacent content. I'm looking very much forward to the, in my opinion, imminent and eventual release of the upgraded Wizards of Morcar, possibly retitled to Wizards of Zargon expansion for HeroQuest. That's what this video is about, and I really hope that we see a reveal of the product at Spiel in Essen, Germany this year. I think it's highly likely that we will see this, and I'm not alone in that sentiment. Now, we do know that this expansion, while it hasn't been officially announced, it has already been teased in the form of a quest that was distributed at Gen Con in Indianapolis this year. I was there, I received a copy of this quest, and so did a lot of people who attended, and you can get your copy too by going to www.ebay.com. If you're willing to pay hundreds of dollars for a piece of glossy paper that has quest information on it, it too can be yours. People. This quest, however, is special because it mentions 2 figures. One, Groshak being the orc shaman of the original Wizards of Morcar lineup, as well as his daughter, Nyashak, who's not a character from the Wizards of Morcar lineup, and this has sparked an entirely new level of speculations. So without more ado, we're going to get into it, and I invite you to speculate with me down in the comments below. Just comment while you're watching. Go ahead and throw comments left and right. The more, the better. And if you really, really like this content and you want to support the channel, I have a 60% off your first month as a Patreon subscriber. That's linked in the description below using code ALLSKULLS. It helps you, it helps me. And so, getting into the very first point here. This is low-hanging fruit, but I believe our very first Wizards of Morcar speculation, we have to address it. 10 quests. The original quest book has 5, just 5. It was 1 quest for each of the 4 lieutenants of Zargon, the Wizards of Morcar, rather, and 1 more quest to finish everything off with a boss fight that had all 4. It is actually a very difficult quest, even by the UK EU standards, which means that all of the monsters, regardless of what type they are, have 1 body point each, with the exception of the wizards, which have more than 1 body point each. I think we're going to see 10 quests because This classic edition actually does have lore notes on Against the Ogre Horde, so it is very likely that they anticipated you might be bringing a party that not only finished the base game system, but also the Against the Ogre Horde expansion. And the EU-UK expansions did like to reference the other expansions, so this gave us a bit of an implied or inferred expansion order, a quest order, a campaign order, if you will. Contemporary Avalon Hill HeroQuest has not really done this a lot, so it remains to be seen if they change up the lore to not reference Against the Ogre Horde as they did in the classic. Avalon Hill, from a gameplay standpoint, also does not want you to have to own another expansion to play the current expansion. They don't really build them for that. They don't scale up the difficulty or anything like that for you to just hop from expansion one to another. The game isn't structured for that as far as difficulty goes. This is why none of the expansions require you to own any of the other expansions, and why you should be, by design, able to finish the game system and then play any of the expansions as your first expansion, your first next campaign of quests. Wizards of Morcar, I believe, will not be any different from the rest of them in that regard. And that's why I think it's very important to have the 5 additional quests. The 5 additional quests will help gear your party up for the upcoming battle with each of the lieutenants of Morcar, the Wizards of Morcar, and then especially the final boss fight. We're going to get into how that could possibly change up just a little bit with the next expansions, or the next speculations, but I do think that it's fair to say it'll have 10 quests, because that is the new standard across all of the expansions, maybe with the exception of Jungles of Delthra that had a choose your own adventure mechanic to it, and so of course it would have more than 10 quests there. My next point of speculation is I believe we're going to have miniatures that represent the 4 Wizards of Morcar. Also kind of low-hanging fruit, and it's something that I would think is definitely a given, but now I think it's fair to say that they might not. I'm saying they will, but one reason that they might not is because of that quest that they was shared at Gen Con, and that quest was centered around the exploration of a dark tower in which Groshak, the orc shaman, was conducting some sort of horrible magic. We have a letter from I don't want to spoil too much about the quest, but spoiler warning here for the next 30 seconds. We get a letter from Groshak stating, Zargon, I have failed. Interestingly enough, it's not addressed to Morcar, which means that this expansion could be called Wizards of Zargon, and I think that that was kind of a given for everybody, but it still would have been really neat for it to be called Wizards of Morcar, and for them to establish a new character called Morcar in this contemporary world of HeroQuest. But anyway, getting ahead of myself. I have failed. I will accept your swift, imminent punishment. In the meantime, here's somebody who's much more stronger than me, who you can take. It's my daughter, Nyashak. So the quest ends on that note. We don't really get an insight into who Nyashak is really. We just know that she's a very strong protege, descendant of Groshak, also an orc shaman, although they do have a different term for orc shaman in the contemporary world here. This seems to imply that we're going to get a descendant for maybe each of the 4 Wizards of Morcar, and I'm going to be using Morcar and Zargon a bit interchangeably throughout the video, so don't at me on the usage of the names, because at this point they're going to be considered the same thing, at least for the purposes of this video. But I think it's very possible that we get 4 sculpts representing the classic wizards, and 4 sculpts representing the proteges, or the new wizards, and these would be the descendants or the associates of the original wizards. I really think that what happens to Groshak and introduces Nyashak is the beginning of a pattern in which we will be introduced to the other proteges, or as I'm going to refer to them, contemporaries of the Wizards of Zargon. We'll get into exactly what that means with a couple of future speculations here in a bit, but we'll move on to speculation number 3. I think that if there is any expansion that has the greatest opportunity to bring back a very specific sculpt, that it's this one with the Mentor Wizard sculpt from the Mythic tier. I know that that sculpt was part of 3 sculpts that were explicitly marked as exclusive. I'm the one who pointed that out and propagated that as best as I could, as early as I could when I saw that. People were complaining with the retail release, where's the wizard Where's the Witch Lord? Why weren't those included? Guys, they say that they're exclusive on the HasLab campaign page. You can't take for granted that something marked as exclusive will be available in retail. However, I do think that Avalon Hill have shown that they can bend things just a little bit, offer things up in slightly different materials, such as the mythic posed monsters, the original monsters that were in the mythic tier that were resculpted to have different forms or poses strictly for aesthetic purposes. They never left the mythic tier, but we do have those same sculpts made in different materials with the Spirit Queen's Torment and Prophecy of Talor expansions. We have the Orc Bard and the Halfling Warlock also with these expansions, but they are cast in a slightly different material. It's a little bit sparkly. It's not just the classic red. This means that we have access to all of the sculpts, except for those 3 that were marked exclusive. The same can actually be said for Venom, the dragon from Crypt of Perpetual Darkness. We have access to the sculpt in a retail format now, but it is cast in a slightly different material. Perhaps it is the act of casting it in a different material that will de-exclusivize, that's not a word, unexclusionaryize the wizard sculpt. I'm just saying that if there's going to be a place for it, it would be this expansion. It would be very, very strange to not have it here, but then have it release in a different expansion. So I think chances are very high if you don't see it with this expansion, we truly will never see the Mentor Mini, and by extension, we will not see the Sir Ragnar or Witch Lord Minis ever again. I do think it's possible that we could see Mentor's miniature recast, resculpted, something completely new. I think that it's possible because they did this with the Druid for reasons unknown to me. We never did get the Druid sculpt from the Mythic tier. We do have the Druid heroes, but they are in the form of halflings with Against the Ogre Horde. So not sure what all the possibilities are there. Moving on to speculation number 4. OG room and magic tiles and cards from Wizards of Morcar in the new size formats. This is a given. I think that it would be wild for them not to have the original room tiles, magic tiles. I keep saying room tile, the tiles that go into rooms, not the tiles that make up rooms. They had falling block tiles and the like with Wizards of Morcar. But I really think that all of that's going to make a comeback. Pretty easy to speculate that much, but of course it will follow the new standard sizes for tiles and cards. And amongst these, we will see the same magic barriers, possibly sculpts or possibly the cardstock homage that they made to the original pieces, such as they did with the Mage of the Mirror expansion. They could have sculpted the mirror. They chose not to do that. They gave us a cardstock mirror that slid into a classic HeroQuest door base. It was straight out of the 90s. Absolutely wild to have seen that. It definitely was not on my bingo card, but it showed me that they have the capability of doing that. So it's possible that they could sculpt the original plastic bases that look kind of like falling rock, and we could get the cardstock images of the magic barriers to go into those to represent those barriers on the board. It would be cool to have them as sculpts, but I could see it going either way, honestly. Speculation number 5, I see them having 1 to 2 new magic user heroes and 1 to 3 new animal companions, although I don't think that they'll necessarily repeat what they did with Against the Ogre Horde. I think that if they include animal companions, they will have a different sort of category for them. I think that they could be referred to as familiars, possibly summons. And this leads me back to the hero types, which I think could include a cleric or priest of some kind of healer, as well as a dread magic user. We'll get into why that is here shortly. And I think that we could definitely have room for a summoner type hero, and that would be amazing to see. So we could be looking at some long desired brand new heroes. And it's been a while since we had a new hero with an expand. I guess it really hasn't, because we got the Explorer and the Berserkers in the last expansion, and they're pretty cool heroes. They're pretty good. I speculate also with this that we get a sort of arrangement wherein we have new spells that could be divided up into 4 suits of 3 cards each, and then 3 of these cards would go to one of the spell casters, while the other 3 suits would go to the other spellcaster, sort of to update your options if you are a wizard or elf player, and to kind of reuse that logic, which we've never seen reused in an official capacity ever again. We see the elf take on new abilities, but with this expansion, we also do see the spells of detection, the spells of protection, and the spells of darkness. So even if they don't repeat the spell sword and magic user power combo and allow us rules as written to divvy up 3 brand new spells and 9 brand new spells between them, at least we will be getting these other spells that were already able to be given to the elf and the wizard. Now, I'm aware that the convention of having the 3-9 split between 2 new heroes makes very little sense if one of them is going to be a cleric and one's going to be a summoner. You'd have to have healing spells as a cleric, right? You'd have to have summoning spells as a summoner, and so on. So it would kind of have to mathematically fit both of these probabilities. Maybe the cleric would have 3 spells that they would have by default that would only be assigned to them, cleric spells, while the other hero would have 3 definitely summoner spells if they were going to go that route. But that's all just speculation, and really I'm not assigning a probability to it. I'm just saying that it's possible, but the more that we talk about the nuances and the combinations, the less possible it kind of feels. So it would be cool to see though. And also, I did say Dread Magic user, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. We currently don't have any heroes that are adept in Dread Magic. Yes, we have the Warlock, but I don't think that she counts. She kind of has her own goals. She doesn't know Dread Magic proper. She's just kind of playing with Dread Magic to get that patron deity going on, that transformation into the gargoyle-like creature. That's not the same thing as knowing Dread Magic, as being able to use the same magic that Zargon has in their arsenal. So I'd like to speculate that this is the expansion to have a Dread Magic using hero in. Now, we have talked about Dread Magic usage. We've talked about the 4 contemporaries of the Wizards of Zargon. Those lieutenants of Zargon were definitely all bad guys. But will their proteges all be bad guys? Will we actually get one of them to come over to the side of good? Either through defeating them, perhaps breaking a curse that's on their mind, as we've done several times before now, freeing them and making them aware of the evils of Zargon, a choice that they doubtlessly already would have made on their own if only they weren't mind-controlled. Or will we make a safe passage for somebody who was already wanting to get out of the side of the evil forces of Zargon/Morcar? I think that we're going to have to fight Nyashak. I don't think that that's going to be a turn her over to the side of good. Although she was named in that quest, she could really be one of 2 characters here. One of 3 characters. She could be a character that is good from the start and was just trying to outdo her father so that she could free the orc peoples from the grasp of Zargon using her powerful magic, knowing that she, if anybody, would be powerful enough to do so, or at least heavily influence the tide of such a battle. She could be an anti-hero that you might have to encounter more than once to bring over to the side of the heroes, and either at that point she'll be an NPC who will show up to assist the heroes in a final battle, or she will be a hero that the heroes can select, kind of like the Orc Bard midway through the Spirit Queen's Torment quest. I think that was handled a bit messily, so I would hope that it's not that situation exactly. I would hope that lessons were learned and that things would be handled differently as far as that goes. Option 3, she's just a big bad, and maybe she is the biggest, baddest of the proteges of the Wizards of Zargon, if indeed there are any others. Option 4 is she just shows up as a boss, we defeat her, we move on to the next one, we forget about her. I kind of hope that there's a little bit more to it than that, because she already seems like such a cool character. I know nothing about her except what Groshak has boasted, and I really want to know more about this character. Alright, this next speculation is also low-hanging fruits, mind points. Mind points, sometimes we have them, sometimes we don't, sometimes they're important, sometimes they're not. If there's any expansion that could make use of mind points, it's this one. This is the magic expansion. This one needs to have a system that will utilize the mind points in a fun way, in a way that makes them relevant, in a way that lets you carry the system over to other expansions and continues to build upon the relevance of the mind points. I'm absolutely sure we're going to get the rule as written about what happens to your hero when their mind points go to 0. But wouldn't it be cool if you had a mechanic where you could spend your mind points to do things? That's all I wanted to say about that one. We will move on. This expansion will either have a new mode of play or a new set of mechanics that make it so different from any of the other expansions that you will be inspired to use those mechanics in the other expansions, and you will wish that other expansions reference them. So cases in point, Jungles of Delthrak had first of all, a bajillion outdoor tiles and a ton of new mechanics that were all sticky or spawnling themed for the good guys. But more importantly than that, it had the branching storyline. I don't think that's going to make a return here. I'm just referencing the fact that something new was introduced with Jungles of Delthrak. Against the Ogre Horde introduced something arguably bigger for the world of HeroQuest, the arena mode. This is a mode of play that is, or can be, completely divorced from regular HeroQuest. It's a brand new mode of play. You can bring your own miniatures. You can turn HeroQuest into a skirmish game. That's what you get with Against the Ogre Horde, and it is one of the coolest additions to HeroQuest. Rise of the Dreadmoon, which is one of the best expansions for HeroQuest, introduced a lot of mechanics that made it very unique. One, it introduced the alchemy deck, the ability for your characters to whip up potions with ingredients using reagents, and you could even maybe buy and sell these potions. It also introduced a reputation system. It introduced townspeople and the Cadre of the Raven's Veil being hidden in quests. It introduced the safe room tile. There were so many things that it had, and you could take all of this stuff and continue to use it in other expansions if you were so inclined. You would have to do a little bit of homebrew. You know, if you're in between quests, how much did you really get in terms of reputation over in Keller's Keep? But still, it was something that gave you options, that gave you inspiration. And I think that we're either going to have an entirely new mode of play, and if we do have a mode of play, I think it's going to be very card-based. You draft your spell deck using the available cards across the game system and across this expansion, which leads me to think that they would have more than just the 9 spells from the original game. Perhaps they would include the spells that were used by the Wizards of Zargon, which would really give you a ton of magical options. And you pit 2 magic users against one another, or perhaps in an arena, you could have 2 to 4 players. So you kind of have like your own Magic the Gathering, or Magic the Gathering the Arena. A bit of a different take on the Against the Ogre Horde arena system, but something I could definitely see happening. The Magic Arena. The Dread Arena. My next speculation is, will one of the Wizards of Morcar associates be a hero? And that's something I've already talked about, but I do think that it's entirely possible that we get one of those as a hero, either unlockable through the quest pack, which I hope is not the case. And yes, I know I'm committing a sin by saying quest pack. It's a slip of the tongue. We'll let that go. Or somebody who will be available outright. And if not one of the Wizards of Morcar, or their proteges rather, themselves, then somebody who is attuned to the same kinds of magic, who was perhaps on the path to becoming a Wizard of Morcar, but available by default, and you only know what you know about them because of the lore on the text on their card. Okay, I definitely think this expansion is going to come with the 12 men-at-arms or mercenaries that the original came with. I think we're going to get all those guys on, well, classically they were on sprues. This time they're going to be in the candy tray. And so with that being said, this might be the best place for a The Dark Company quest to take place. Now, while I say it's possible, and it definitely is possible, and you'll definitely be getting everything you need to make this quest using what you already have, you can probably do that just with the base game system as it is. Well, at least after you get the men-at-arms or the mercenaries from the Frozen Horror. Scratch that. It would be this expansion that would give you what you need to actually play the Dark Company. I don't think that they would include the quests, or the quest, the 13-part single quest of the Dark Company in with this expansion. And the reason that I think that is because A, they already have to do a lot of work updating the difficulty of Wizards of Morcar, or leaving it alone, but then developing those brand new 5 quests to get you strong enough to tackle the US version of what a Wizards of Morcar enemy set on maps, if they didn't change anything, would be like. But then they would have to do the same thing to the Dark Company. The Dark Company is a notoriously difficult quest. It is very, very hard. And that's by UK and EU standards, where all of your Chaos Warriors have 1 body point, where all of your monsters have 1 body point. If you update this to the contemporary global rule set, it becomes much more difficult. And you're not really in a position to be tackling this, I think, just from completing the base game, unless you completed the base game with a fully kitted out party and didn't lose anybody in the last 1 or 2 quests. Still, this would be the expansion to include that if they were going to do it, because it would just make it very, very easy to include it. I don't know if they would really produce the quests, because they would still need to, if they were going to put it in a quest book, a standard new quest book, they'd have to use 8 pages. They would have to represent the board 4 times. No, you don't need 4 boards to play the Dark Company. You don't. It's supposed to be played on 1 board at a time. You would just switch out the components, but they would still have to represent the board 4 times, and they would have to have the quest notes for each of the 13 sections separated across those 4. So it's kind of hard to say that it's likely. Moving on from that, the last speculation I have is possibly Lost Wizard Quest Pack miniature or ability content being here, but I don't speculate that it will be included, and to be quite honest with you, I hope that it would not be, because the Wizard Quest Pack was designed as a completely separate quest pack in the US by a US designer using components from the already existing Wizards of Morcar. If you want to trigger Ash, you can say one of 2 things. You can say, oh, the Wizards of Morcar, that was the Wizard Quest Pack. It was not. It was distinctly different. 2 completely different things. Wizards of Morcar, for example, came out. It exists. The Wizard Quest Pack, Sinister Sorcerers, does not exist as a finished retail product. They are 2 different things. We're going to look at some pictures. I'm going to put the credit for these photographs as well as the website that they are hosted on in the description below, so you can actually do the reading. I don't want the viewing of these photographs to replace your viewing pleasure of that website. So we're not going to talk about the notes that were with this, but we'll look at the pictures, because I want to drive home a point that when I say Wizards of Morcar, and especially the, not Wizards of Sinister, the Wizard Quest Pack, the official actual Wizard Quest Pack that would have been, and especially the Dwarf Quest Pack, which had a working title of Hammer of Hadraka, were in varying stages of completion. I don't mean that their respective creators were hunched over desks with varying stages of completed notes or completed maps. I mean that these were slated to go into full production at some point and had gotten as far as the prototype sculpts being made. This is a prototype sculpt from one of the giant wolves of Mage of the Mirror, but the website that I will link down below has pictures of all of these beautiful sculpts. And you can kind of see the minor changes that were made between the prototype and the finished product, which these prototypes are so much better because the finished products changed the scale just a little bit and really made the figures not look like they fit in with the HeroQuest universe at the time. The next images I'm going to show you are pictures of the prototype master sculpts before they would have been miniaturized. Obviously, we're looking at the Carrion Crawler, which would have gone into, I believe, the Dwarf Quest Pack, and those notes do exist out there. This looks like a Saturday morning cartoon monster. It is not one of my favorite sculpts, and I don't think it fits the classic world of HeroQuest. I don't think it looks like it could stand with any Citadel sculpt. However, I completely 180 with this sculpt of the bad guy dwarf holding the mystical hammer of Hadraka. He looks awesome. They did a fantastic job on this guy. He didn't make it into the production world, but these other guys did. We have right here the female dwarf that would have been for this pack. We have, and she looks great too. I think she looks great. She's threatening enough. She's not conventionally pretty or attractive by, you know, Red Sonja standards, but Sonya, Red Sonya, Sonja. She's got her Charizard on her shield. And then we go right back to Saturday morning cartoon with this rock golem. And he is just the goofiest guy. I really wish they would have used like an existing Citadel sculpt for these guys. And I swore up and down that they would have. That's not the case at all. I would have thought they could just use the Minotaur sculpt that exists from the Warhammer Quest universe. It's easy. It's right there. It already matches, but that's not the case. They would have sculpted a completely original Minotaur. And contrary to what I swore would have happened, which is they would definitely have used Skaven for the Ratmen. This is a tunneler, by the way. It's a rhino is what it is. It's definitely a rhinoceros with oversized front paws, hands, hooves. What do rhinos have? Never mind any of that, but they would not have used the Skaven sculpts at all. They actually sculpted a completely original Ratman, which I just absolutely so blown away that they did that. When they had the ability to say, hey, Games Workshop, can we lean on you? We have our saber-toothed tiger sculpt. I believe this would have been in the wizard pack, and it would have acted as a friendly, and he looks great. I love him. He's got a little bit of a Saturday morning vibe, but I don't think he mismatches too much. He's threatening. He's actually a good boy. Here's our rat man. We would have had a couple of these, and I can't stand him. He's fine, I guess. I can't be too biased just because he's not a Skaven. I like rat creatures, but like the ones from Dark World, which are not Skaven, look so much cooler. Dark World Village of Fear. So I know that levels of coolness can be achieved without going full Skaven. But yeah, here was our Ratman. So now I can stop calling them Skaven because they just would have been Ratmen. This just further divorces the entire HeroQuest world from Warhammer at the time. There are echoes, and I mean echoes, of the Dwarf Quest Pack in Jungles of Delthrak, but you just can't convince me, even after thoroughly looking at the differences and the comparisons between the two, that Jungles of Delthrak is any way, shape, or form a suitable substitute for the Hammer of Hadraka. There just aren't the minis. There just isn't the story. There's not the theme. We need to have the Dwarf Quest Pack and the Wizard Quest Pack separate, or perhaps combined, but still in some shape or form delivered to us retail. I would love that. That's on my wish list for 2026. And I say that it can happen because although a copy of the designer notes is with a third party right now, and I think that that third party is absolutely fantastic for wanting to recreate from those notes what the expansion would have looked like, and I think that it's the correct move to divorce it from the IP and say, here, you know what game this is for, go ahead and use it, sculpts, notes, quest book, and all. But I think it would be better if those notes are just completely released in their entirety so that anybody can make their own version of it. And I think it would be best of all if Avalon Hill used the notes that they have in their possession to recreate these. Recreate the quests that would have been and release them so that they can be official and retailized. And I want that to happen before this chapter of HeroQuest, or this book of chapters, closes for good on this era. For those who are unclear about the statements that I've made on Avalon Hill having the notes, it was at one point mentioned or asked in the official Avalon Hill Discord whether or not they had what they would need to create the Wizard and Dwarf Quest Packs, and Chris Nato said, and I quote, "We, period, have, period, everything," in all caps, period. And I took that as a very clear sign. He knew what he was answering. He knew what he was saying when he responded with that. So I know that Avalon Hill have to have the best version of those notes and the best version of where those productions were at, and possibly have quite a bit more than what the third party has with the personalized notes that they had from the letters to and from the designers and so on. So I hope that we don't see any lost Wizard Quest Pack material with this upcoming Wizards of Morcar, Wizards of Zargon expansion, but I have high hopes that if they want to recreate those expansions, that they absolutely can. So that's everything. That's all of my thoughts all out there. I hope that you were typing along, and if not, I hope that you can give me nice, big, detailed chunks of your own speculation, because I read absolutely everything. If your comment got a heart, it means that not only did I read it, but I highly appreciated it. And if you got a response, don't measure the quality of your posts by my responses. Sometimes I respond with one-word memes. Don't forget I got a sale on my Patreon. 60% off your first month is a pretty big deal if you select one of the higher tiers. It's a great start to the brand new year-long loot tier, or you can just get a cup. And you can toast with me in the mornings when you watch AshQuest. That's all for now, brave heroes and evil wizards alike. I'll see you in the next exciting adventure. So for now, onward.